Hello everyone. Just another update really to keep things moving along, I suppose. I wanted to start off with just a few things that have come to my attention, some new, some old, and a mixture of both really. And want to start off with the not ever so long ago rise to the throne by Charles, Charlie Boy, Prince of Wales, now King of England. And I don't really follow the news, but I just wanted to make you aware that Charles's association with the World Economic Forum goes back quite a long way, as you can see in this photograph, which is easily, just search for Charles World Economic Forum 1992, and this photo will come up pretty much very quickly. So bringing that up to date, there is a video on the World Economic Forum's channel here. So this is like 32 seconds long, so I'm going to play this now.
Case we have no alternative, because otherwise, unless we take the action necessary and we build again in a greener and more sustainable and more inclusive way, then we will end up having more and more pandemics and more disasters from ever accelerating global warming and climate change. So this is the one moment, as you've all been saying, when we have to make as much progress as we can. Case we
So I think that pretty much says it all, really. I mean, that's pretty good for 36 seconds or even 33 seconds. You've got all the buzzwords in: global warming, climate change, and doom and gloom, all of this carry on that we've seen. And this is Charles just right in there, right in the middle of that agenda. And he, of course, now is King of England. And this, of course, is on the World Economic Forum's website. So I don't really think I need to say any more than that. Perhaps just to note the ending here with all these sustainable wind farms, where they've got to bury all the blades of these in the desert because they don't degrade. I mean, how sustainable is that nonsense? Well, we'll get to a little bit more of that type of thing in a few minutes, perhaps. So, I don't, as you know, I don't buy any of this. We know, for example, that Hurricane Erin was manipulated on 9/11. So the whole nonsense about climate change and global warming is just another fear card. And you can read my book, which I'll also just put a link up for, just in case you haven't come across that yet. Please do share this book, by the way. So as usual, all these links will be included in the description of this video. So please download and share this book. I made a sort of promo video and stuff. I wrote this, I think, 2017, and got quite a few people to look at it. So, make of it what you will. Please share it. There's quite a comprehensive review here by Teresa Bacon lower down this page. So that'll give you a good synopsis if you don't want to sort of read the whole thing. But again, please share this information because, it's just getting really bad at the moment. And I hope that we can all do what we can to, get people more clued in into what's really going on. So moving on to one of the next global scams then. The latest COVID thing that's coming out in the mainstream. Of course, they're now starting to talk about in certain areas of the mainstream the deaths attributed to the COVID jab, of which there appear to be many. So, this is now coming out through people like Dr. John Campbell, who is sort of like in the mainstream but somewhat alternative. And I was notified about this debate in Parliament with this Andrew Bridgen, who's the MP for North Leicestershire, and you can watch this video if you want. But I was also advised by someone that Bridgen himself seems to be kind of like a last-ditch political effort by him to get someone to support him, because he's got huge personal, financial, and domestic problems, and this guy's apparently, I understand, homeless at the moment due to his rather bad handling of a business and agreements with his relatives and stuff. I'm sure you can find that in the press. I mean, it's way sort of down the ladder of my interest, really, but that's what I've been told. And you can see this debate here where he's making lots of good points, which people, who were clued into the COVID agenda, as soon as it started, they were saying that these jabs were going to have these effects. December 2020 when they first came out, people had already knew by then that there was going to be some very, very serious effects. And you can see here the House is empty. I'm not sure what time this debate took place, but it wouldn't surprise me if it was like 11 o'clock at night or some silliness. And there's virtually nobody in the House. So, that sort of shows you the attitude of these MPs and so on. So I'll leave you to look at that. Then related to that, we've had some things going on in Australia, sort of going back to the climate change thing, where there's an interesting video here by Senator Alex Antic, who talks about your city tracking you, and I forget which city this is, or Unley it says there, look, the city of Unley, and I don't know where this is in Australia, but they've got this city park, and they've got this digital signage there, and he goes through, for example, how this system that they've got there is tracking barbecue usage, and you can even bring up graphs so it knows how the barbecues have been used, and the diesel fumes and all of that, and all these graphs are shown, and he's arguing, of course, that they can use this to sort of ration the use of barbecues in that particular park, because this is all being tracked. So this is kind of like the Agenda 21 thing actually there in the park being used with this technology, which is pretty sophisticated when you look at it, and so at least he's clued in. And then Alex Antic also appears in this next video, which you can watch, about Senator Gerard Rennick, and of course he is now talking about the COVID agenda and the role of big pharma in that, and so he's bringing out some of these points. He still kind of goes along with COVID really happened, and it wasn't. I don't think he goes into it being orchestrated completely from the get-go, but he's kind of getting there. And as you can see, we've got a house in the Australian Parliament. Again, I don't know the details of which house it is, whether it's the equivalent of our House of Commons or Lords or whatever it is. But you can see it's a relatively empty house here. We've probably got, I don't know, less than a quarter full, probably about a tenth, judging by that. And he's a pretty hard line with some of the people there, and of course they resent what he says and blah blah blah. And it's just all the sort of usual political debate, and they're not really getting to the root of the problem, which is, of course, is that these decisions are made outside of Parliament by people that are in the shadows, and then they of course influence and control the people that are in the public light and in the House and in the large corporations which implement these agendas. So never really gets to that, of course, but at least we've got some sort of exposure of this in the mainstream, I suppose. But that's really all I can comment on this. I mean, you can listen to the whole thing if you want. I think it's like, well, you can see it's got 10 minutes long, so it's not very long, this particular video. So moving further along to other matters in Australia, somebody posted this to me recently. I've mentioned this chap before, Ricardo Bossi, or Bozzi, I'm not sure how to pronounce it, and you can watch this video by him on Rumble, which I think is about, if I click on that, I think that's about half an hour long, and he's popped up a few times. I'll just see how long this is. I'll just start this up and pause it. Yeah, it's not very long, this, it's only sort of 5 minutes. So he again is coming out with a sort of QAnon type narrative that he said that there's going to be a few weeks of not much to do. There's going to be sort of power cuts and things, and he's talking about revelations about people, and that these military tribunals are going to kick off, and certainly have kicked off in some areas according to him. And I'm still not sure what to make of this. I really don't know whether there is a real kind of movement behind the QAnon or the Q people, or whatever you want to call them. I'm still a bit undecided on that. However, a friend of mine, before I move on to the thing, if you want to read this piece about Ricardo Bossi, this is kind of like a hit piece against him. And I don't know, this is a sort of semi-mainstream criticism of Bossi, and they actually point out that they're supposed to have formed this Australia One Party, but I think the thrust of this article suggests that this Australia One Party doesn't actually exist, or it hasn't gone through the formal procedures to be registered as an electable party, so to speak, and they haven't gone through the motions. But again, this could just be another cover story to try and say that Bossi is a bad man and is defrauding people out of money and stuff. I don't know the truth of that. So again, you can look into that and make your own decision. But going back to this idea of there being a continuity of government, which is kind of like related to this QAnon, that some people claim that Trump was part of this effort to establish a kind of continuity of government, which was going to, get rid of all the bad guys, basically. Again, I'm not convinced of this. However, this particular chap, Patel Patriot, is convinced that there is such a continuity of government, and I haven't read this sequence of articles. Indeed, I've only got the broadest of outlines of it from my friend, but apparently he says this is a very thorough and well-referenced set of arguments that there is indeed a continuity of government, in place, which is, gradually getting rid of these people. And you can read, you can read the QAnon stuff like the 121 Q proofs or whatever. That's quite an interesting video which I've referenced before on my website. So again, make of this what you will. My biggest problem with all of this is they've made certain claims that things are going to happen by certain dates or roughly about certain dates, and none of those things have visibly happened, at least to my knowledge, apart from a few arrests of some paedophiles like Epstein and John of God, and the apparent shenanigans with people like Tom Hanks, and occasional references to strange goings on with Hillary Clinton and so forth. I haven't seen much compelling evidence other than those things, so I'll await any comments on that I get on this video. So that's that. Now moving on again separately to a different question, we're going to look at the energy issue now, and a couple of people sent me this story: breakthrough in nuclear fusion energy announced, and this was on December the 13th, you see here, and this is from Lawrence Livermore National Laboratories, and this is just bogus. I mean, let's just read this passage here, shall we? So this breakthrough in fusion energy, what exactly is it? Well, how close is a fusion-powered future? This is from the BBC article, of course, as you can see here. The amount of energy they've generated in this experiment is tiny, just enough to boil a few kettles. So to boil a kettle, you need 3 kilowatts of power. So it's 3 kilowatt is about what a UK kettle is for about 1 or 2 minutes, and so they're talking just a few kilowatts of power here. This is, and it says, but what it represents is huge. The promise of a fusion-powered future is one step closer, but there's still a long way to go before this becomes a reality. This experiment shows that the science works. Before scientists can even think about scaling it up, it needs to be repeated, perfected, and the amount of energy it generates will have to be significantly boosted. This experiment has cost billions of dollars. Fusion does not come cheap, anybody. It doesn't come cheap. But the promise of a source of clean energy will certainly be a big incentive for overcoming these challenges. So there you have it, folks. That's what you've got. You just give us another, well, let's just round it up to the nearest $1 trillion. Then we'll have this fusion energy. And this has all come from this analysis by this very knowledgeable science editor, Rebecca Morell. Well, Rebecca Morell, why didn't you link us back to, for example, something like this, which I remember hearing about, and I've heard many stories similar to this in the last 20 or 25 years. Here we go. 2014, February the 12th, America's multi-billion-dollar laser-blasting fusion machine has gotten more energy out of a smidgen of fuel than was put into it. But the most significant thing is how it was done. The latest experiments reported in this week's Journal of Nature marked a first for the National Ignition Facility at the Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory in California. They're the first laser shots to produce a net gain in energy under any definition, and they're also the first to show evidence of a mechanism that's essential if controlled fusion is ever to become reality. Bit of deja vu here, folks? Well, there you go. Make of that what you will. So, moving on then, I was also contacted recently and I was sent this video. I know Bob Greenier here. And this is kind of this again is kind of old news really, but it's nice to see that George Hathaway is still around, and that he was talking to Bob Greenier here. I know Bob quite well, and he's been doing some interesting research into how the Hutchison effect works and how it's related to cold fusion and other processes which experimenters working on the fringe of physics have been dabbling with for decades now. And Bob has actually met a lot of these people, and it's great to see him with George Hathaway. You can watch this interesting video where it's basically just a review of the Hutchison samples. Hathaway is a scientist. He's written a book. I forget the name of the book. I think it's in here somewhere, but you can find the name of George Hathaway's book about the Hutchison effect, which I think he wrote a good few years ago, I think in the 1990s or something. So you can watch this, and it just gives you a bit more background on some of the samples. Most of it I'd heard before, but it's nice to see that George Hathaway has still got these samples in his possession. And of course, these are very important. These are the real samples which indicate some sort of fusion energy or something related to fusion that's going on somewhere in this process, and this is related to what's called cold fusion. And of course, this is really key to a lot of this, because we know for a fact that this sort of effect, this sort of technology, was used on 9/11 to destroy the World Trade Center. And of course, people at Lawrence Livermore know this too. In those that work in the black world or on the fringes of the black world, they know this. People like John Alexander and folks like him, and probably Hathaway too. I'd like to get his take on. I hope he's read Where Did the Towers Go. I guess he would not publicly comment on it, but maybe Bob Green, you will ask him privately. I don't know. And so finally for this video then, Bob also has visited John Hutchison. I think he's on the same trip. George Hathaway is still in Toronto, and John, I forget where John is, somewhere on the stateside. And this is quite an interesting talk with Bob and John. And Bob is compiling a book about John and his work, so I look forward to reading that at some point in the future. And again, they go through some of the samples and how they were made, and John, is in good form here. It's nice to see him well and happy and still willing to talk about his work publicly. Again, you can make of that what you will, and watch the videos, and I think you'll find those very interesting. So I think that's plenty from me for now, and so I wish you well in 2023, because it's coming to the end of 2022 now, and we can only put out videos like this and share them in the hope that more people become aware of the degree to which they've been scammed in energy, health, food, money, etc. It's all part of the same scammery system, which has been done apparently by the same sorts of people with evil intent that want to keep us down and keep us oppressed. But in reality, of course, we are free spirits, we are spiritual beings having a human experience. And so I'll leave you with those thoughts, and wish you well, and thank you again for watching and sharing these videos if you do, and for your general support. It's much appreciated.